Are we doing us questioning, answering first, and then we're streaming her?
We're gonna us first.
Then
Us talk. And then I was gonna have her answer the first question at least, and then because I know where it stops, and go from there.
She did a great job of like introducing herself and then answering each question, so we can literally just like pause, play, you know.
All right. How's it going, everybody? And good evening to those of you that are watching at home from YouTube, and eventually will be listening to the show from at home as well. My name is Omar Thabit here, and I'm one of the hosts of Table Talks. And then we got a couple of guest hosts here. We got Shaman Ghalib in the building, and then we also have Big Sis in the building as well. Shout out to Big Sis, she's here as well. So thank you again, Shaman, for being here. One of the reasons why you weren't here yesterday, or last week, Tuesday that is because Allah yarhamah, your uncle passed away. And you know, our father, for those of you that don't know, our father passed away over the summer as well. Allah yarhamah. And so it kind of got us thinking, because we were talking about Abd Malik al-Sanabani last week as well, and it kind of had us thinking, Allah yarhamah as well, by the way, and it had us thinking that, okay, why don't we have a conversation about grief? Because I feel like this is one of those topics that people kind of don't want to discuss too much about, and for some reason they don't want to get into details about it. And so that's kind of what we want to talk about today. So, you know, we ended up getting, Shema ended up getting Dr. Nicole Monteiro on the show as well. And so she basically, we have her on the television, and I know you guys are seeing us, our Audacity right now, but we have her right here on the television screen. She kind of pre-recorded her answers because she's a professor, and she introduces herself as well. And so we are looking forward to her answers. We are looking forward to also hearing you guys. And for those of you that are going to be watching, if you have any comments, feel free to ask. Feel free to comment, because we are here and we want to talk about it. And if it starts to get emotional, we even got tissues. You want to grab those tissues just in case. We might get a little emotional tonight.
I got my oils. She got her tissue box. We're ready for this one.
I want to put a disclaimer out there. If my voice starts to change or I start to tear up, my street cred is still phenomenal. It does not go down from here. Let's just say that.
No, I'm gonna do my absolute best. No.
Yeah.
I got my armor on. We're ready.
Yeah.
We're ready
So
for this one.
all right. So by the way, I'm happy that we are all here. The team is here right now, and we're gonna get it started. If that's okay, we can kind of get it rolling. And my wife is laughing, so she's chiming in. So it looks like we are good on YouTube. Just wanted to make sure we're looking good over there. And we can get the ball rolling on the road. So like I said, this is Dr. Nicole Monteiro. She is a psychologist. And what is your focus on again? I remember she had it on her Instagram title. Trauma.
She's a trauma expert.
Trauma expert. So she's going to kind of introduce herself a little bit more, and then we're going to kind of go from there. And the first question that we asked is, what kinds of grief do people deal with? She kind of gets into detail about that. So we're going to hear Dr. Monteiro speak for a little bit, and then we're going to go from there. All right?
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings, everybody. I'm Dr. Nicole Monteiro, and I am a licensed psychologist and professor and a coach to women. And I'm so happy that I was invited to this podcast to talk to you a little bit about grief. I think this is such an important topic for us to talk about because of it's a part of life, it's a part of the human experience, but also because of the times that we're in. There seems to be so much upheaval, from war and natural disasters to sort of this thing that we're all living in now, which is COVID-19. So grief is definitely a timely topic, and it's something that even if it's talked about from a religious perspective, we don't always talk about it enough just in general conversation, so that we're all familiar with what grief might look like for different people and how to deal with it. We're usually pretty unaware of exactly what to do. And at some point, all of us will experience grief in some form or another. So I'm going to go through and address some of the questions that were asked of me. So one is, what kinds of grief do people deal with? And that's really important. So why don't we kind of, first of all, define what is grief? Grief is can be defined as this experience of deep sorrow, oftentimes in response to the death of someone, someone close to you, a loved one, someone whose loss you're really feeling. But we can grieve different things. And when we think about grieving, It's usually a process. Some people might call it bereavement, but it's this idea that it's something that's ongoing. It's not necessarily a one and done. Like, a lot of times we think about the event, whatever the loss was or whoever we lost. And from there, it happens, the grief happens, and then it's over. But it's really a process, and how long and what it looks like really varies from person to person. So, there's grief in response to a loved one, and even within that, there's so many different ways. Sometimes in our field, we have something that we call complicated grief, and that's where, and there's grief in response to trauma. But complicated grief could be where maybe there were some unresolved things in your relationship with that person or in the circumstances of the loss that really make it hard for you to kind of get back to yourself after the loss. And you could feel really, really depressed for some time. You might feel like you don't, want to go on. You could think about not wanting to be here. And this is not to categorize some grief as like you're doing good at grief and you're doing bad at grief. It's just to say that certain situations can make the grieving process a little bit more complicated and difficult for some people. Sometimes if it's the loss of someone where the loss is expected, not to say that that doesn't still hurt, but it might have given you time to prepare or to, to feel like you've gotten your mind, you've been able to process it. But when it's a traumatic experience, it happens suddenly, no warning, or the situation, the circumstances surrounding it are, traumatic. Maybe it was a violent death or one where you, the person who's still surviving, witnessed it. In circumstances of war, we're hearing a lot about forced migration where people are leaving their countries at the last minute because of the threat of violence or war. That, that you could lose loved ones in that process. And if you experienced it or witnessed it, it's also a traumatic experience for you. You could also be grieving. Loss, doesn't just mean the loss of a person. So you could be experiencing grief in response to many different losses. During COVID, a lot of people talked about experiencing losses that they weren't aware were going to affect them like this. Loss of employment, loss of a way of life, being used to seeing, socializing or seeing people that they're close to, loss of money, loss of homes, loss of jobs, right? Sometimes there's something that we call ambiguous loss where it's not something you could put your hands on and other people don't necessarily recognize it as a loss. And you could be grieving that loss and not really know how to put words into it, right? So there are all kinds of different experiences of grief. Grief when you lose someone, when you lose a way of life, when you lose your livelihood. And it could be complicated depending on your relationship with the person or the thing that you lost, if there were any untied, things that were not resolved. There have been, I've been doing some reading, and there was a case where a wife lost her husband, and around the time that she was planning the funeral, found out that he was actively having an affair. So she had a lot of complicated feelings around that whole situation and things that she was no longer able to process or talk to him about. Okay? So the next question.
All right, so that was Dr. Monteiro's answer to the first question of what kinds of grief do people deal with. Is there something that you want to add to it, Shay? And then I'm going to ask you the same question, Abir.
I just want to say that Dr. Monteiro made a very big, important point that I just want to take the time to shed a little bit of light on in my perspective on grief. And that's just the personal grief that comes with just living life with our own personal tests and whatnot. It doesn't necessarily have to be a death. It doesn't have to be something really big or traumatic that's like bigger, But everybody goes through pain. Everybody goes through a little hardship in their life. And because of that, there's a grieving process that needs to be dealt with. There's a grieving process that needs to be even acknowledged. And through everything, I feel like once we realize what words represent what feelings, like once we have that fundamental development, I feel like that's when we can start actually doing stuff. And she just made a great point. It doesn't need to be something that's
as big as like death or something. Like grief is multi-leveled. It's trauma. It's death. It's losing somebody. It's breaking up with somebody. There's so many ailments to this word grief, and she did a really great job about talking about the different ailments. And I just want to say that I grieve through my health, through my personal health. And that's how I grieve, and that's how I learned that lesson of grieving and how to be grateful and how to deal with my own things. And we'll get into that. But I just want to take that moment and say that personally, my struggles came from within, and that's how I was able to give out. So I love that she mentioned that.
You want to add on anything to that?
I just want to put an emphasis on what she said with it being a process, that grieving being a process. And honestly, I think it's even a cycle, that there's times where you're good and there's times when you're not good. And it's not going to be, there's not a time limit where you'll feel better, and you might not feel better. It might be something that lingers with you for the rest of your life, and that's okay because everyone grieves differently. So I love that she mentioned that as well. She hit actually
Dr. Monteiro is a freaking rock star. She's a beast,
I wish I met her in
mashallah.
person.
She's a beast, mashallah.
All right. Well, now we can move on to number 2, because she kind of covered everything about what kind of topics or what kinds of grief do people deal with. So, I'm gonna let you start off on this one. So, how do you deal with grief? All right, that is a big question because everybody's a little different. So, how do you deal with grief?
Okay, so I am not saying the way that I deal with grief is at all the right way, because I'm human, and I tend to want to be alone. Like in the beginning, I want to be alone. I really don't want someone to tell me, hey, I know what you're going through, because no, you don't know what I'm going through. I don't want people to tell me that everything is going to be okay, because they can't tell me that. Like, they can't guarantee that for me that everything is going to be okay. But when my dad, Allah yarhamah, passed away, and there's lots of different griefs, but for me that was the biggest. The biggest thing for me to go through. So in the beginning, I was in the denial stage. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to believe it. In my mind, I'm like, he's going to come home. He's going to come home from the hospital. He always goes to the hospital. It's a routine, and he'll be home. And even when, he was getting worse, I still didn't want to believe that, he was going to pass away. So then you start to get angry. You get angry at the doctors, the nurses, even, little things at home. I started to have a little attitude with everybody. And it's my way to cope, and I hate that about myself. I get very, bossy and very what do you guys, why are you doing that? And
irritable.
Yeah, I just don't, I don't know. I'm just not that, whatever. That's how I get. And then I start, trying to tell the story. You know what I'm saying? I find myself trying to explain, how he passed away. And I'm not explaining it because I want that person to know, I'm explaining it so I can understand why he passed away. Mm-hmm. So I can, get a better idea in my head. Okay, this is why, because he was having this and this and this, and they tried this and this and this, and I'm literally bargaining with myself, telling myself this is why it happened. And it's crazy because it doesn't really matter, what happened, because if Allah wanted to take him, he was going to take him regardless of what we did or what happened or whatever. If it was his time, it was his time. And then you go through depression, so that's the me being alone part. People would come over and I'm like a zombie. I'm not really talkative. I'm kind of zoning out. But there's some people that when they would come over and I knew that they went through what I went through, that stuck out, because I know it would be a person that lost their parent or their dad or their whatever, and then they would give me certain words, and I'm just and it would hit me. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that they went through what I went through. And a lot of the time during that time, I would go onto YouTube and watch lectures, because I want to know what my dad was going through, what was happening in the qabr, what was happening afterwards. So I'm finding the knowledge, looking up different lectures. And the one thing that stood out was a lecture with Umar Sulaiman. And I wrote this down because I didn't want to get any of the names wrong. But he explained about the time where the Sahaba Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when his father passed away. And he said a normal person, came to the Azat and told him, okay, it's better for you, the reward of your patience during this time of your father's death, and Allah is better for your dad during this time. And that hit me because you go through so much patience during the time of a loss. It's crazy the amount of patience that you go through with everything that's happening, and no one knows. Like no one knows. And when you have that in your head, like, oh, I'm gonna get all of this reward, and my dad's in a better place, especially if your father was righteous and did what's right, and alhamdulillah, like, no, Allah ya'lam, but alhamdulillah, from what I know and from how I seen my dad at the end of his life, it was a relief to understand that, okay, he's in a better place, inshallah, Rabbi yarhamah, and, he's in a better place, better than anything that we could have did for him in this world. And by me going through the patience, I'm getting rewarded. And at this point, you get into the mindset of, what can I do to help my dad? Me being in bed or not talking to anyone and being depressed and not moving on with my life, that's not going to help him. But me making dua, giving sadaqah, and the immense amount of friends that gave sadaqah, and I appreciate you for what you did, honestly, and everybody else that gave back in my dad's name, it helped me overcome the grief.
Yeah.
So basically, being depressed, educating myself, and having hope. That's my cycle in that way.
Can I give you a hug, by the way, just to let you know, your brothers.
We don't do this, by the way.
Yeah.
We really don't.
But that's one way we should start learning how to deal with grief. And Shaman, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to you. Same question. That was a great answer, by the way, Abir. Very good answer. And how do you deal with grief, Shaman?
Okay, I got a little bit emotional because I really did a great job and I felt every single word that you said. But I want to talk about it. I'm getting so hot right now. But I want to talk about it on a different perspective. By somebody that I feel like I give grief. You know what I mean? Like, I come from a spot in my life where it's so hard because I know the things that I'm going through and how it's affecting the people that are around me. And that's a different type of dealing with things that, like, nobody really talks about. Like, we understand that things happen in the life that, like, we have to deal with because it's something that we didn't control. But then, like, turn it around to the person that can't control but is active. Like, what I have makes people sad, especially if you're, like my parents, my family, whatever. So it's so hard. It's so hard being the person that actively is giving that grief to people. And for me, that's something that I have to deal with. Like, I'm trying so hard right now to, like, stay strong. But when you deal with that and you're actively trying to find your hope and your gratification and your sense of just, like, stability, and then you're actively the person that's, like, instilling that, it's so hard. That balance is so difficult. And that's why, for me, I learned not to speak about what I'm going through anymore. There are certain doctor's appointments that I won't take anybody with me. So now I'm going through stuff alone. So now I have to deal with my issues alone because I don't want to give anybody more smoke than I'm already dealing with. And that's a form of more grief on myself. So now I'm dealing with so many different ailments of this word, and it's like haram. Yeah. Like, wallah, like I'm actively the person that's like, yo, listen. So that's why how I deal with it. If you can't laugh about yourself, man, you're gonna take everything with you. You're not gonna go anywhere with life. And I'll just tell you guys a story that's just like, it's a personal. Like I said, I'm not gonna talk about anything that I don't know. I'll talk about exactly what I do know. But I was in class, right? I'm a nursing student, and I mean, you would think that we're all nursing students. They should know the deal. I was giving a presentation. I was on the board. I have multiple sclerosis, so one of the things that I deal with is my legs go numb. So you know that feeling when your foot goes to sleep? So I get that feeling from my toes to my belly button, both legs, all the time. Okay? So I have to learn. I had to learn how to deal with that. Okay? Learn with somebody touching my leg, like, hey Shay, look what's going on, and not freaking out, being able to walk, move, and just be like, okay, like, is my feet really on the ground? And they are. Okay, so I'm on the board doing my thing, whatever, and all of a sudden I hear, whoa. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? I looked down, and I had an accident on myself.
Oh, hold on.
You know, I couldn't feel my legs. I didn't know what to do, and I just had an accident on myself. And I'm looking down, and I was like, whoa, well, she just decided to do her thing.
Oh, my God.
You have to laugh it off.
Yeah.
You know, you have to laugh it off. If you don't know that little second, if I did, oh my God, I'm so sorry, what would have happened afterwards? I would have probably been in tears. I'd have probably been in the bathroom trying to compose myself, get myself together, but no.
Yeah, I would have probably never came back to class.
And that's what happens.
Yeah.
Girls, I know people, they're like, oh my God, I feel sick. Oh, sorry. They'll be like, oh my God, I feel sick. And they'll be like, oh, let me use it. I have to go to the bathroom to throw up or whatever. And then they go to the bathroom and you never see them again. And me, here I am, like messing my mouth after, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, so how I deal with these problems is I honestly look at the people that have it worse.
Yeah.
You know, I look at the people that are in worse situations than I am, and because that's how you find your comfort. I find it's messed up. I don't care. You know, I go through my own. I'm messed up. I'm crazy. I'm a little crazy. I'll admit it. But how I feel a little bit better, knowing that there's people in worse situation than I am, that I need to be grateful for whatever I'm going through.
SubhanAllah.
And that's that.
And I feel like Allah gives you what you can handle, and He knows that you're a strong person.
No, I look at myself, I'm like, what the heck? Like, how did I know to have just like extra clothes in my car? Like these little things that you're not thinking about. Like it's already laid out for me, and I'm like that just. What? You know? And then you tell yourself, like, you could feel sorry for yourself, and nobody's going to look at you sideways. If you feel sorry for yourself, everyone's like, oh, yeah, haram miskina. But why do you want that?
That label, I still don't understand how people would be okay with that label.
Yeah.
Like, no.
We'll talk about that, because miskina...
Yeah, I hate that label.
Talk about it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say two things. Number one, you know, I guess I'm going to come from a guy's perspective when it comes to grief.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's important maybe to share this, and I would speak maybe for, I guess I'm not going to be speaking for all men because everybody's different, but, you know, the stereotype of men is basically that we tend to grieve on our own, and, you know, some people try to act like that it doesn't happen, the emotional part of it and stuff like that. Well, I'm here to tell you straight up that that's not true. Like my sister Abid was saying, when my dad passed away, it was a shock. I mean, he was getting older, and he had his pre-existing conditions and stuff. But at the same time, it was a big one in our family, not just for us, for a lot of people. And so, we went through our stages, like my sister was saying. It's that stage of shock, and then it's that stage of irritability. Like, you don't want to be bothered by nobody, and everybody's trying to call you and talk to you, and send their condolences.
We appreciate
Yeah, we appreciate that.
But it's like, at that moment, I feel like we just didn't have enough time to be together as a family.
Yeah.
We had to get up, and you had to,
Prepare.
show out. And I remember the night my dad passed away, my mom was worried about getting timid and getting water and getting, and it's like, why do we have to worry about that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Anyways, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
But like when you guys are dealing with that, right? And then because I just dealt with it with my uncle, and I mean, like, to be honest with you, I don't really have a feeling towards it. But like when I felt like some people were sending condolences just because they felt like they had to, almost, and like that in itself is irritating. I respect it, I love it, thank you so much. But even just dealing with the saying, I mean thanks.
Yeah.
Like, even that was irritating to me. But I know it's a custom, you have to do it. It's part of the but like, even that's just a lot. Like, you know what I mean? That's so distracting. So I get it. So when you guys are like haram, so let them do their thing, because you don't know what to do at that point.
Yeah.
And even from the other person's perspective, the one that wants to say their condolences and stuff, I get it. I get that you're like awkward. Like, do I not?
Yeah.
And everybody's different, and everyone's different. And it's just, it's a part of grief. It's the whole process.
It's the process.
Yeah.
And that was the problem with me, is that I was never really good at how to tell people that kind of conversation, because you don't really know what to say, because we never really experienced it.
Yeah.
We've had death in our family that was, traumatizing, but it's not the same when it's like your dad.
Yeah.
I feel like our cousin
siblings,
passed away, and that was traumatizing, because she was so young, and and then like our auntie, Allah yarhamha, she passed away, and that was, but like even though like our dad, Allah yarhamha, like he had the sicknesses, and we knew the day was coming, right? It's I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're married, you're not married, you're old, you're grown. When your father passes away, it's like you're a child again. I don't know. I felt very like my backbone was gone. Like the person that I was, I would flex about my dad. I'm not gonna lie to you. I would use him as a flex. Like if I did something good, yeah, and bin Sada Ali. That's bin Sada Ali right there. And like, it was so devastating. It's still to this day like, it's not. I don't know. It's just not the same. And people need to understand that, like, let people grieve the way they want to grieve. Let people be the way they want to be. And even when she mentioned the guilt of moving on, I still feel guilty for moving on. I'm sorry. Like, that's why when I get invited to go places, I don't go. I just can't. Not yet. That's just me. And leave me alone. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off.
No,
go ahead.
definitely. No, I was just going to say, like, just, I think there's men out there that just don't talk about it. That's what I think it is. People like to put up a front, but every man out there, I think, grieves in their own way. But, I'm not saying that you have to cry when you grieve. You know what I'm saying? And I know there's some people that don't. I ain't gonna lie to you. Tears do shed off my face.
I was gonna say, you cry.
Yeah, I do. That's why I'm a.
But like. You guys, there's so much. Okay, first of all, if you want to look at it from the science perspective, we release toxins when we cry.
I'm going to be honest with you.
So
You feel great after you cry.
Number two, it's a ni'mah min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala why we cry.
Yeah.
We don't know why we project these tears. We don't know why we feel good after we cry. We're releasing stuff that should not be in our bodies through our adrenal glands and all of that good stuff, and they're coming out. So when people have this notion like, oh, I don't cry, I'm like, how much toxins are in your body, bro? That's why you're the way you are.
Yeah.
Like, straight up.
People that say that usually upside.
They're all like, like, I don't do this. No. I'm like, I think you go to the corner, honey. Like, let's get some time. You want me to?
I'm not gonna lie, man. It takes a lot for me to cry.
Me too. But when I do, when I do though,
I hate it though. I want to. Sometimes I'm like, khalini, like,
But yeah, it's a little different. Me, I don't even like to think. Wallah, I'm telling you guys, I can't even sit here and tell you guys the things that I was like dealt with. I felt like Frankenstein, like literally on the table. Weird. But when you're in situations like that and all you have are tears, you know what I mean? When all you have to release some type of, you can't hit something, you're restrained. I'm crazy. So I was restrained. I was not allowed to have anybody next to me. So now you're dealing with somebody that can't talk to anybody, somebody that can't lift anything. So what are you doing? I can't talk. Nothing. Cry it out. Yeah. That's all you can do it sometimes. And again, it's part of the process. Nobody needs to see it. You don't need to tell nobody. Nobody needs to see it. Nobody needs to hear it. Just do it. Just get it out. Get it out.
Believe me, there was when you're alone and it's that nasty cry too.
Yeah.
That But if, like you said, it feels good. It really does.
Two things I want to say, just off what you're saying, and what was most impactful moments for me and what made me like emotional was sharing that moment with people that Baba love.
Yes, I was gonna.
You know what I'm saying? So like those were the moments that helped the grieving process. Believe it or not, it helped it out because. You knew that person was sincere. And then the second thing I was going to ask you,
you would hug them a little bit tighter when, it's so, subhanAllah. We didn't even talk about this.
Yeah, so what I was going to ask you, Shay, is you mentioned that you feeling like that you're the person that's giving grief to people. And now that you go to the doctors and stuff like that, do you find that easier on you or harder on yourself?
It's definitely a different hat to wear, 100%. It's like, it's so hard. Well, Ahmed, it's so hard because I have to be the person that says the bad news, right? So like I'm here and I'm like, okay guys, so this is what we're dealing with. And then I'm running to the other side, like, but wait. Don't freak out because I'm here. But low key, I'm scared as hell.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to play both roles. I shouldn't have to be the person that has to give the news because you guys don't come with me to my appointments. So I have to tell you guys, obviously, because I'm having surgery in a month and we need to know. And then now you're azzying or now you're upset because I'm going through something. So now I have to support you, but I'm scared. Like the amount of fear that is in my body and what I'm going through is just it's hard.
Yeah.
It's so you play this double role and it's like well, like that's why with my life I feel like I don't even have room anymore to like think about my own emotion when it comes to like actual pain.
Because you're so worried about what you're giving the other
everybody. And now I realize, and that's another good point that's probably going to go back to that second question, is I realize that through all of the hardships that I've been through in my life, what brings me the most comfort is when I use my own hardships to help people. Okay, look at, like with you guys. At that point in my life, alhamdulillah, Allah yarhamah, Khali Muhammad, but he was the first death of my family. Like, this is the first one that, like, it stung. Like my cousins are yatimeen now. Like, you know, these are my sister. She's my sister. You know what I mean? And now, like, it's crazy to me. Like, this is at home. But at that time, I was just like, okay, so this is a huge one for us. But at the same time, I loved the fact that I brought comfort through helping people. Like, I don't know that pain. I don't know that pain of really losing somebody, like how you guys lost your father. Because alhamdulillah, like, my parents are still aishin. You know what I mean?
Allah yatawwal bi'umrahum,
Ameen ya Rab. But how did I know to give that type of love to you guys in the best way that I knew how? You know, I was like, listen, I don't know death. It's not my tea. It's not what I've been through. I do hardship, I do pain, but that sector of pain, I'm not really familiar with it, and I just got familiar with it, subhanallah. But like, it's crazy because we were connected, and I knew that the way that I was going to be able to serve your family and that means of hardship was in a way that was going to be better than me, you, your dad, your mom, everybody. It was going to serve us somebody that's going to make all of us proud, and that was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he was pleased with my action for your dad, your action for accepting it on my behalf. Like, it all took a family effort. Now this mic is going to give me hell, but it was a family effort. We talk with our hands.
That's Yemenis.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I have to put my hand right under my leg so it doesn't happen again. But like, I didn't know, and I was just like, you know what? If something happened to me. And again, this comes from being the griever, okay? This is a different perspective. But I looked at it like, Shema, you're always giving hell to people. Straight up. I'm always the bearer of bad news.
I really wish that you didn't have to go through that, because I can't even imagine I don't understand what you're going through, but I can only imagine. But I do want you to really put yourself first in that situation, and if you really needed them to come, I really want you to, you know, just let them know.
So,
you know,
so that's where it's at right now in my life. Right now, it's like I said, you're the bearer of bad news. So it's like, when do you want to give them the news? Because now I'm putting myself first. I'm not telling you. No, I'm telling you, but it's like, I'm sorry, but it's bad news. Yeah. You know? And so, like, here's a big one that's happening with me right now. I mean, my sister's getting married. My sister's getting married very, very soon. And I have a surgery that I'm thinking about scheduling. And I'm like, crap, I know I need to do this now. The only break that I'm going to have from school is the same time that my sister's getting married, so I can't do anything during that week. It's my sister's wedding. And then afterwards I have to go back to school. So when am I going to schedule in the surgery? When am I going to let my parents or the family know that, hey, something got to go because I have to do this thing? You know, who honestly looks bad? The bearer of bad news. You get what I mean? So then I have to, we're like, okay, it's my health. That should be number one. But because of the type of person I am, you don't want to be the person that's saying, hey sis, like, when's the, because I don't even want to have those conversations. So here I am, like, okay, so she said it's going to be on this date. Okay, so remember not to have it. So just, that's stressful. Yeah. You know, that's so much to deal with. That's so much trauma. So like, I literally am a walking trauma ball, and every day it grows more in a different perspective. That's just so like,
Allah ya'inish, inshallah, and Allah give you clarity and help you through that. It's
different. That's why when you guys said we were gonna talk about grief, I was like, man, I'm not even gonna tell you guys what perspective I'm gonna come from, because I feel like I'm the person. I'm in a like a walking, talking grief ball.
Well, I really wish that you don't feel that
way. And I speak for people that are even in worse conditions than I am. Like, you know, people that are going through it, wallah, we all feel this way.
You know, it's crazy because I know it's nothing near what you're going through, but I could even imagine people that are going through, like, marital issues. Yes. That don't want to bring it up to their family. You know what I'm saying?
That's the thing, though. People think, oh, health, she only understands health. This one, no. Pain is pain, girlfriend. Pain is pain. My pain, it just hit me through that an ailment. And it's my lingo, so I can speak it better. But if you're going through marital problems and you connect with me because I'm going... it's all pain. So
and
that's why people are.
You don't want to tell your family because then your family is going to get upset, and
it's all.
It's a lot, and I just wish our families maybe could be a little bit more understanding that, you know, we all go through things, and to be supportive instead of being the one like, oh, you're only thinking about yourself, or oh, you're only, you know.
Yeah, Debbie, I get a lot. I get like drama queen, or I'll get like, oh, like here comes negative Nancy, and I'm like, you guys, like, it's so sad, like haram, like, you know, it's happening to me, and I'm still walking, I'm still talking, I'm still doing what normal people do, I'm still going to school, I'm still like active in the community, I still do all of these different things, and I can't even have the decent level of, I feel bad telling you something about what I'm going through, like.
Yeah.
It's a messed up world we live in. We kind of just, everybody wants to be in their own lane nowadays. You know, everybody wants to just keep moving forward, and nobody wants to focus on something.
If you don't take care of you,
nobody will.
Yeah, nobody else will.
Yep.
That's just kind of how it works. And so that kind of leads to our next question, and I'm going to let her answer this one. And so basically the question is, how do you want people to support you when you are dealing with grief? I know we kind of touched on that, but we're going to hear what Dr. Monteiro has to say with, you know, how do people want, you know, support while they're dealing with grief?
The things that most people want is someone who has a level of understanding that this is a process. I can't emphasize enough how destructive it can be when we try to put people on a timeline, or when we don't allow people the opportunity to express what they're feeling. Sometimes people hold in their feelings because they don't want to bother anyone else. So if we could just be a listening ear, if we could be a presence that is not judgmental, doesn't always have to say something to make the person stop crying or feel better. Sometimes people want to express how they're feeling. They're not necessarily looking for you to fix it, but they're looking for you to be present and be there for them. And so that's what, you know, in my own experiences of grief, I know I lost my grandmother when I was a teenager, and I was very close to her. And I remember I was crying, and I didn't feel it was anything wrong with it. I was sad. And at the funeral, an older relative was like, oh, she doesn't understand. She doesn't understand. And I thought to myself, that's ridiculous. I do understand. I understand that she's not here anymore, and that's why I'm feeling sad. So, you know, one of the things we can do is try not to use these platitudes like, oh, everything happens for a reason, you'll get over it soon. You know, sometimes people just want to feel comfortable enough with you that they can break down if they need to, or they can share memories or thoughts that they have about their loved one. And that's that. They don't really necessarily need a lot from you outside of your presence, which can be very powerful. Okay? Number 4.
All right, we just wanted to make sure we talked about that. She moves on to number 4 next, but go ahead.
My biggest one that I get all the time.
Kulishi Maktub.
That was a good one, but that's probably top 3.
Okay.
I mean, but that's a good one, though.
No, this is where I want to
things.
start. I want to start punching, because now you're gonna use the religion to belittle, and I don't like that. This is my thing. Say alhamdulillah. Say alhamdulillah. And then they'll talk, like, yes, or kulishi maktub, or another one that's a big one. What does it say? What do they say? Inshallah khair. Inshallah khair. Like those
every hardship comes ease.
So like, okay, like I know these things. I know these things, and sometimes that's what our tongue just automatically goes to, because these are just like our backups, right?
Yeah,
like these
I don't
are
think
just
we
our
even realize
what we're doing to the person, and it's like, okay, here we come somebody. Wallah, guys, think about this. 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's say, 4 o'clock. We'll just give it an even time. 4 o'clock in the morning. Fecal position. That means head to my knees, okay? Holding my stomach. The night before, I just watched a lecture that, subhanAllah, when you deal with stomach issues, you die shaheed.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I'm in fetal position saying, Allahumma tahharni, Allahumma tahharni, Allahumma tahharni, Allahumma tahharni. Like, God, take this pain that I'm doing and just cleanse me with it, okay? That's what I'm saying. Then I'm in a state where somebody's telling me, oh, say alhamdulillah, inshallah. Like, I'm already praising God for what I'm not gonna say alhamdulillah. I'm gonna say, God, help me. Don't tell me how to tell God. You can't tell me what to say. You can't tell me how I'm feeling for me to say to. No. No. So when people use words like that, I'm the first one to say, no, you do not want to do that. Like, if you want to be the person that says, inshallah khair, you better have something before or after to say.
Yeah.
Like, do not just stop at inshallah khair, because inshallah khair what? Inshallah khair what? Inshallah khair, you get better, Shema. I know you're going through a hard time. You know, everything happens for a reason. Allah chose you to be a warrior, this, that.
May Allah ease your pain.
Yes, I'll take it. Thank you so much. But when you tell me, inshallah khair, oh, God chose you, and you're just like kind of gazzering it almost, and you're using the religion to belittle, I'm never talking to you about my problems ever, ever, ever again. And now I have this view towards you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Coming from somebody that's suffering, actively suffering. Like, I'm going to look at it. Like, and I mean, I'm not going to ever expose my judgment, but I'm going to keep that within. Like, I'm going to know people's truth. SubhanAllah, when you go through stuff, and you guys can entail to this, but when you go through stuff, random people are hitting you up that you didn't even think that, and they're like, and you're like, wow. You know what?
And they're really touching you.
Like,
you know?
Wallah, when Sada's reaction for what I did with her day, she was like, I couldn't even believe it.
I couldn't believe it either, yeah.
And I was just like, you know what? I was like, subhanallah. Like, you know, people that really genuinely care about stuff, they're going to genuinely show you that they care.
Yeah.
Everybody else is a filter that you need to get through it. Get through that filter. And that's what that's it. So, like, it's sad. It's sad that we don't have support. It's sad that we don't have support on a family basis, on a communal basis, on a basis that now people find comfort from a random person on TikTok, off of a random daily reminder, or off of something that they say, oh, you know what, girl, you matter, this, and it's like, that's where you're getting your confirmation. This is where you're getting it from. What about your next door neighbor? What about your coworker? What about people that you should be actually getting comfort from? Like, wallah, haram. And then it's like people that you guys know, like, you guys know me. You know I'm suffering. Like, can you guys, like, imagine if I had somebody that was in my corner that was just saying, you know what, Shay? I see you, girl. I see what you're doing. Like, but no, it's expected. Now it became an expectation. So now, yes, you go through all of that stuff, but I expect you to be better than the rest. And it's like, all right.
What are your thoughts on the situation? Basically, how do you want people to support you and stuff like that? Some of the things that she mentioned, the doctor and Shaman just mentioned as well.
What she meant, she said it very well, but the one thing that resonated with what she said was when people tell you stories, you know? I actually love that. I loved when people came to visit and they would say a story about my dad, and like maybe from his younger years or things that I didn't even think that my dad even did. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like it made me, I don't know, it was like a connection. It made me feel better. So I appreciated that. Just giving me my space and not assuming like that. I'm like not just telling me everything's gonna be okay.
Right.
That's the thing that kind of got under my skin. But I also like people were so kind. Like there were people that were very kind in so many ways. They brought food. You know, they came to visit. Like I appreciated like all of it. And then like the donations of the wells, like that was beyond what we even expected. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So just benefiting the person. Well, I'm just talking about death right now, but there's like other losses or whatever. But in the sense of death, do whatever you can do to benefit the one that passed away. We're gonna cope and we're gonna figure this out. We still have time. And you know what was another thing that was kind of very beneficial? There was this female, I don't think she would want her name to be spoken, but she came and she did a muhadara, like and she made
Say it in English for people that might not know.
like
a lecture.
A lecture.
Yeah.
And she made every single person in that room cry. Not because of my dad passing away, but because of her using my father as an example that we're going to be in the same spot and we need to look at ourselves. And I don't know, that like was just so, just, I don't know. It made me get goosebumps. Like I was crying. Everybody in the room was crying, you know? And stuff like that. I think that's what we kind of need. Like that reminder that, that this is what our plan, this is what our purpose is. You know,
sometimes like you don't like, okay, cause like, you just said it, like she used you as an example, but wallah, like, I feel like in 2017, I lost myself. Like that part of me died. Like that identity that I was carrying, normal Shaman Adi, she died. She's no longer there. Now it's a new identity. It's a new something that I have to deal with. And so in that process, you lose the sight of not like you like using yourself more like as an example almost. So I was looking at my old self and I'm like khalas, she's gone. So now, but how do you even explain that to somebody? So now, like, coming from this perspective, like I couldn't even like put words to it. So like I'm somebody that's like alive, but I don't feel alive. Does that make sense? Like I'm literally alive, but like not that I shouldn't, because God makes no mistakes, but I don't feel alive. I don't feel like the normal things that people, like when people feel this or this, I think about it in a different perspective, and I know it's because I went through stuff, and it's different when you are actually dealing with it.
Yeah.
Like I can, wallah, and this is what drives me, like I can't imagine if my sister or my mom had MS, you guys. Wallah, you saw my reaction. Like I will literally, I don't know. And I'm like, subhanAllah, God gave it to me. Because I would not know how to react if it was just if it was my brother, I wouldn't know how to react. And I look at myself and I'm like, girl, you're the one that's doing it to them though, you know? So it's like, it's such a yin yang, bro. It's so crazy. Because you're the one that you're like, okay, thank God it happened to me. But then they'll never understand why it happened to you. So you're like.
Yeah.
I mean, as a parent, you know, being in the parent perspective, you know, when your kid gets sick, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, oh my God, I wish it was me.
It's the worst feeling.
You know what I mean? I wish I had the sickness and not my child.
Can you imagine about my mom and my dad?
Yeah. So and people sometimes tend to not know how to, because they're not in your position, to not know how to support you being in the position. Mm-hmm. So I feel like you just got to continue to educate them. You know?
And here I am, very vocal. I'm a very vocal, outspoken person. I'm not the person that's going to like try to conceal my feelings or no, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm feeling. And then it's still not enough. So here's somebody that's like, you tell somebody, talk about it. Talk about what you're going through.
Yeah.
I'm talking about. I'm doing what I'm supposed. What you guys said to do, I'm doing it, and it's still not. So yeah, and you're like, what? So you literally have to find your own special twist to it. You have to find it, and that's something big. So like everything that Dr. Monteiro is saying, everything that we're saying, everything that you guys are taking in, like find your own little twist. You don't have to take everything that we're saying. I mean, obviously, these are all of our personal experiences, but we're all sharing our personal experiences so you can find your ailment, the thing that's happening in your life, and putting your own personal twist to it and how you're going to deal with it because you're not alone. Nobody's alone. Well, if there's people that have it worse than you, I'm guaranteed. Guaranteed there's people that's worse. If it wants to make you feel better, I'm talking, and I've had a total of 37 plus surgeries in my life in the last 2 years. Think about that. That's insane. That's not, old people don't even get that. And so people have it worse than you. You know what I mean? And so I think that's very important to think about too. Like 100%. thinking about the people that haram. They don't have they can't think about how to deal with their grief because something bad just happened again. So it's like constant. And we know this. We're from Yemen, you guys. Yeah. Like we have that war. We know what just happened. A couple of weeks with our Yemeni brother, man. Like haram, can you imagine his family? Can you imagine what they're still doing with the government, with this, with that? Because they can't. Too much. So I think it's very important to just like be cautious and be aware that you do not know. Be patient. Yeah, you do not know what people are going through.
And the most important thing I think is sometimes just listening. And I think she mentioned that, and I think that's very important. That's something that I, as people that are teachers in the education field, they teach us sometimes to just listen to the students.
I mean, let me ask you though, because you're a man, and I mean, and men don't really, when it comes to like grief or when it comes to actually like talking about stuff that bother them, you guys are not really vocal. You guys don't really have that communication. So like for men that are listening, and for like people that want to like they know that they should, but they don't know how to. How would you advise people to be like, you know what, like it's okay, just find somebody that you're comfortable with, or like what are the mechanisms that you did as a man to deal with stuff? Like I know you sit here and you say listen and you talk about it and it's okay to cry, but like are you finding somebody specific to cry to? Are you doing it beinak wa bein nafsak? Like what are you doing? Because there's so many men that need another man to tell them yo, like.
Yeah, so I guess to answer the question, I think if only they knew how great they feel right after. That's what made me continue then. Like, once I actually did it and had that conversation. And, obviously my wife is the person that I kind of talk to the most. But a lot of the times it's just me by myself. Right. Me and, talking to Allah, and hopefully going from there and seeing how, and it still feels great. It still feels great, and to letting your emotions go, it feels amazing. Like, I think people don't realize that. I was talking to my barber, Aaron Brock. You know, he was starting like a little barbershop, you know, conversations with people, and he was saying, like, you do not know how many guys were coming up to me afterwards and saying, like, how great they felt, that they were letting some stuff off their chest, and they were holding it in for years, not just for weeks, months, years. People have held their feelings towards something, their thoughts towards something for a very long time. And like you said, it's very unhealthy. We could sit here and talk about the science behind it. I'm going to sit here and talk about the reality of it, which is you just feel amazing. You feel like if you even just have a listening ear, which I was trying to get at basically, is if you just have somebody that can just listen. And it all depends on what the situation is too. You know, that's all depends on who I talk to. Obviously, if you have a good close friend, or you can start groups, man. You'll be surprised how many guys out there are in the same situation as you. And if you guys can talk about it, the problem is people are afraid to do that. People are afraid to talk about any issues that they have or
being vulnerable is very...
Yeah, but people don't realize, and I watched a video on this, Miss Njiku. Shout out to Miss Njiku, Hanley International Academy. But she told us that the biggest trait, one of the biggest, best traits of leadership is vulnerability.
Oh.
You know, showing people, like, people are going to see you. If you're the principal of the school, you're doing all this stuff, you're invincible. But when you show people that you're vulnerable, that's when they follow. Because then they got that element of understanding and actually human element. Because people look at you like, dude, this person is Superman or Superwoman. She's Wonder Woman, you know, she's doing all these things. And then they see you cry or they see you have a hard day and saying, like, I'm having a hard day, please forgive me. You know, like, that's when people are going to be like, you know what? They're actually human, and I'm going to follow this person. And that's what, you know, that's what I feel like. I think it's important to being vulnerable is very important.
Yeah, so, like, I think the biggest thing when I started going, like, public with everything that I was going through, I wanted to share the imperfections because that's what brings people together. So this whole notion of, like, flaunt, everything is good and you don't have anything wrong, so only show your nice stuff. Nobody can come over unless the house is clean, or you don't talk about yourself unless it's good grades, or you graduate. Like, you don't talk about the bad stuff. You only talk about the good stuff. To this day, I'm doing everything in my power to break that, to show people that it's okay to be vulnerable. And that's where it stems off of, because, yeah, it's a good thing to show leadership, and I don't mind being the person that throws myself under the bus to make other people comfortable. And it works. Like, wallah adim, like, Abid, you don't understand. Like, when you told me months ago, you're like, Shaman, wallah, you just going out there and you're just talking about you and what you go through, you gave me the confidence to come 100%. Out and talk. And then when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, Shaman, you're doing something. Yeah. You're doing something. And these little tiny things, like, you're making people okay with being vulnerable. You don't want them to be out here saying, oh, I have a medical condition, da, 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 da. That's how you were able to say it. But they don't need to be putting out their business, their sauce out here on the streets. Like, nobody needs that. But the fact that it's reflecting in a way where somebody's showing their true leadership because they found the vulnerability through me, like, you know. And that's my problem though. But haram, like, why do people, in my perspective now, I'm singular. Now I look weird. Now that I speak about my problems and my issues or what I go through, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo, but I love it. You know, it's the best thing being the black sheep, you guys. I love being a black sheep, but. Yeah. It comes with.
I mean, that's how it starts. That's how. You know, you're gonna have to be the trailblazer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I don't want to, you know, but you're basically the trailblazer. No, at this point.
And to me, like, I take every single role that I have. I take it with dignity, and I mean, you guys could see I do everything with too much passion. But my thing is, like, what saddens me so much is when people don't understand what you're going through or why you're doing it. And they feel the need that they can give a commentary on it. And that commentary will make that person literally grief. Like, you're causing them so much pain. Like, wallah, you guys, I had somebody in my DMs, so I don't check my requests anymore. But I had somebody in my DMs they named me, but they named me the pit in hell where I'm going to reside. That's what they told me. They said, because of what I post on Instagram, there's a spot in hell in the pit of... that I'm going to be residing there. Somebody else told me that the stuff that are happening in Gaza is my fault. That I'm the believer that's causing so much sins that what's happening in Gaza is accustomed to what I'm doing. Like, How are you going to put that on somebody? You see what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
So there's no more rahma in this world. And then you tell somebody that, be the trailblazer. I'm like, okay, I will. But you know what happens when you're the trailblazer? You deal with stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know how hard that stuff is?
It is. And that's what stops a lot of people from being public.
Yeah.
Is that negative,
Yeah,
and I remember him
sure.
telling me, like, when I wanted to, start talking and start being in, like, the public eye, he was like, you got to be ready for the negative stuff, you know what I'm saying? I was like,
oh my God, me and Ahmad, we would have months and months of meetings because we were trying to, how we were going to strategize what we were going to do with the hate or what we were going to do with people if they're going to talk. It's such a big thing that we have to deal with. It's a whole different part of the cycle of grief. And that's what's so, like, we need to talk about it all.
Yeah, that's a whole nother...
That's a whole nother issue. But, like, every single thing is a dimension of this process. And if we're not dealing with every single ailment in this process, we're not getting nowhere. If you make this side perfect and you're forgetting this side, your triangle's falling apart. So,
just...
Go ahead.
I think the whole lesson behind this is that let people be themselves. Work on yourself. Focus on yourself. Be true to who you are. Don't worry about nobody else. Because this is what I tell my first graders, you guys. You're in charge of yourself. And I feel like I need to tell the world, you're in charge of yourself. If people aren't being happy, leave them alone. If people are being sad and they're not reaching out to you for your help, leave them alone. Just let people be. Life is too short to be focusing on other people. Water your own garden. Mm-hmm. Period.
You know what? And then also, I also want to make this very, very important, though. If you have that type of heart where you genuinely care about people's well-being, and I'm this person, 100%, and I can see somebody going through it, don't be afraid to ask them if they need anything. Or if there's, like, you know how many people, I'm not a texter. I'm a horrible texter. But there'll be so many random times where I'm like, you know what? I know this person went through something, and I'm just going to text them, make sure they're good. So I'll send them a little chat like, hey, I know you don't really like this, but I'm just checking in on you. It's whatever. If they don't respond, who cares? Who cares? Mm-hmm. You're doing it min qalbish. You're doing it from the bottom of your heart. You're not doing it for satisfaction. So you're doing it because you genuinely care. Nobody's going to take away from your identity. But also, don't get upset, just like how Abir said. Don't get upset if they want their own space and they're not responding, or if they're in their own zone, because
you're not entitled.
You're not entitled. Do not stop taking things personally. And that's actually another great conversation that we need to talk about. Yeah. That's a great one. We're not taking things personally. Yeah.
All right, we could jot those down after we finish this show. Just talk about a few next couple weeks topics. But at this time, I did want to give a shout out. I know we're in the middle of this conversation, but I'm gonna give a shout out to our sponsor. BC Adhesives is the first one. Shout out to BC Adhesives, 4655 West Oakwood Park Drive, Franklin, Wisconsin. Their number is 188-679-9825. They are sponsoring all the shows, the Fantasy Guys, Movement, and Table Talk. BC Adhesives, you can go to them for all your industrial adhesives needs. They do book binding, food packaging, and like I said, all of your industrial needs. I appreciate the guys over there at BC Adhesives, Matt Cassidy, Terry Cassidy. You got Ed and Jake over there. Thank you guys for your sponsorship. People out in Wisconsin giving sponsorship to a guy out here in the Metro Detroit area. So thank you so much to those guys. They're like family out there in Wisconsin. Really do appreciate them. The Packers just smacked the Lions, by the way. We were texting yesterday. So just kind of going back now to the original.
What else is new?
Yeah, nothing is new about that. So kind of going back now, the next question that I had, and we kind of talked about this, so we kind of maybe could hear her answer, then we can move on to number 5, and that is basically how do closest family members and friends deal with grief. So we're going to hear Dr. Monteiro, for those of you that are tuning in. Dr. Monteiro she is speaking on this question as well, so please feel free to hear her out on how do her closest family members and friends, and somebody that's in the field, how she hears people deal with grief.
How do our closest family members and friends tend to deal with grief? I think it's the same thing, right? I think the key thing is it depends on the person. Sometimes it can be harder for us to be there for the people we're closest to because we might feel uncomfortable seeing them in pain, right? We might feel uncomfortable. We might see a side of them. We might be used to them being the strong one or the one that never cries. And I think what's most important is to give them the space and let them know it's okay. I'm here for you. You can express or show those feelings that you have. I'm not judging you. I'm not expecting anything from you, right? So we can be modeling or showing for them compassion. That is just so important. Compassion for what this process is like. And then again, it's a process. It's not a one or done. It's not a checklist that you can say, okay, what stage are you in, right? Especially if it's a close loved one. Now, I'll go back to when the question about the different types of grief. There's something that we call ambiguous loss. That's where you feel like you lost something, but it's not really acknowledged by other people. So a lot of times, or it's not, it doesn't feel like it's concrete, right? So when people are displaced and they have to leave either their home or their country or their state or their locality and relocate, it can feel like a huge loss, not just because they lost their home or their job, but it's a whole, their environment, what they're used to. And they can't always put that into words, right? So that can feel like something that can be really difficult for a person to come to terms with or to really deal with. And so it's really important sometimes that we just give space and we're there with compassion for someone, and that we not question their loss, right? Sometimes people say, well, that person wasn't that close to you, or that wasn't a big deal, right? That's the opposite of what we want to do. We really want to recognize that every person has their own experience of grief, and that we cannot, no one else can judge how they should be feeling in regards to how close or not the person was, or how significant or insignificant you feel that someone else's loss is, okay?
All right, so that kind of answers the question of how do closest family and friends deal with grief. I bet I'm going to let you kind of touch on that a little bit more. How do people you know deal with grief? You know, the people that you're close with.
Everyone deals with it differently.
How does our family deal with grief, Abid? How about that? Let's start with that.
You know, I feel like we have this, we like to stay busy. You know what I'm saying? We like to avoid the topic. I feel like we're not really talking about our feelings. Like, we're just not like that. We're not. We're always like, you good, we're good. Like, what are you doing today? Like, oh, I got this going on. Da-da-da. No one stops and says, how are you really feeling? We're not like that. And we need to, I feel like we need to get better with that. Mm-hmm. But it's even hard when you're not used to talking about it to know where to start to talk about it. Like, you just don't know. We kind of feel the situation out, but we still have a lot of work. So we're not perfect. We're not saying that we're perfect at all. Like, we're just, we're like a normal family, So everybody handles it differently. Like, I see my sister, like my mom, she loved having people over. She wanted people over every day. Like, to her, it made her, forget. For me, I'm just like, they're coming over again. Like, it should be only this much days. Like, I'm like the opposite. And then I see Sada is very talkative, and she'll talk more, and she's able to express more. And then you have Shaman, who's a little bit more quiet and reserved, and I feel like she was going through it. I feel like she had a hard decision because she was getting married. Right. And a lot of people at that time wanted to share their thoughts on what we should do. And I felt like that they did not give us enough time to grieve. They did not respect our opinions. They did not, whatever. So, long story short, I'm supposed to say how our family grieves. Everybody grieves differently. The only thing that I would not like people to do is that the way you grieved when your parent, we had people tell us, when, my blah, blah, blah died, we had a wedding right after, and, whatever. That's you. That's not us. You know what I'm saying? Don't compare. A lot of people compare when they grieve. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I have to be this way because they were like that, or they did that, so we have to do that. No, everyone is different. And I feel like we all grieve differently. And I think we all gave each other the space to grieve differently, within our household. And, yeah. So, I don't know. I think I went kind of far with that. But, let me just go back to my corner here. And yeah.
So how do people grieve with different situation?
Do I really have to put people on blast?
No, I mean, you don't have to get specific.
I hate the azing. The people that I know.
Oh, that's actually...
The azing irritates the crap.
The wailing, the hitting, the stuff like that's haram.
Okay, no, it's...
Crying is normal.
When you take, and again, it's different type of grief, but I'm going to talk about it from my ailments, right? So like, let's say I'm having surgery, okay? And I'll hear a specific family member and be like, yo, عدمني راسي البنية عندها عملية. Oh, my daughter or my granddaughter or my niece or my cousin or whatever, she's having this or and it's like, you're doing the most. Like, you're literally using my suffering to give you some type of attention.
Yeah.
You know? So that's, we talk about how everybody has different...
They make it about them.
Yeah. We talk about how give your people their space if they're grieving the way that they want to grieve, right? But what happens when their grief affects you? Like when somebody uses your grief to, like, but it's yours for them. Because they have the reason. Like, well, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love it when people are like, oh, yeah. Like, oh, she has, I know Shima, she has this, mashallah, she's strong, she's this. I'm like, you never, ever, 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 ever have ever asked me if I'm okay. So what gives you the audacity to use my story to give you attention that you are affiliated because you can use a strength story now? And that's what I feel like it became. I feel like a lot of the real life struggles that people go through, now it became like they're like, oh, you don't know what I've been through? Oh, you don't know what I've been through? I've been through the... It's like, we've all been through something. You know what I mean? So it's like, calm the heck down. So I don't like the whole aziying thing. The whole aziying, عدمني راسي, the hitting the head and the wailing and the... I don't like that. Everything else is cool. I mean, the whole space, give it to them, whatever. I'm the same way. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. Don't breathe next to me. I get really irritated. Mm. But at the same time, the whole you using it on my behalf, save it for the birds.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit more, but I think that kind of covered that. And so
the whole side story there.
Yeah, so the final question that we have is tips on how to deal with grief and I guess how to move forward from it. But just want to give another shout out to my last final sponsor, which is the Balkan House Hamtramck, before we move on to the last one. Shout out to Juma Ekic and Hassan over there in the Balkan House, 3028 Kniff Street, Hamtramck, Michigan. They also have a location in Ferndale, 314 West 9 Mile Road. Their number is 313-262-6234. That was the Hamtramck location one. The Ferndale one is 1248-268-4920. They even got a truck now. I'm sure you've seen it around town and around the area. The Balkan House, the food truck that they have. So they're sponsoring all of our shows, by the way. They're famous for their doner kebab sandwich. They even serve breakfast now. And all their food is halal. I don't know if people knew that or not, but everything that they have there and that they serve is halal. Service is A1. You know, we got Hamza from the movement that works there as well. So we got family that's in that building as well. And they always give back to the community. So again, thank you to Juma. Thank you to Hassan over there. And so I'm going to let Dr. Monteiro answer this final question first, and then we can kind of share our thoughts as well on how to deal with grief, tips on how to deal with grief, and then moving forward from it. And I'm going to tune in here because I didn't hear this last answer, and so I'm jotting down, taking notes, just so I could give advice to people, to students, and to anybody else that run into this problem as well. So,
number 5, what are some tips on how to deal with grief and how to move forward from it? So what I would say is I would not necessarily use the word move on or move forward. I would say how to continue living a meaningful life. Okay? It's a slight change in terminology, but what I would say is recognize that things may be different. Mm-hmm. Recognize that you may go through this process. I saw a great meme that showed, like, it's almost like you're filling in new holes that have been left by this loss. So you're not going up through stages, but you're kind of filling in pieces gradually as you continue to live your life. And you want to continue to live a life that's meaningful, where you don't necessarily forget your loved one, but you feel content that you can continue to live your life. You don't have to feel guilty. Most of us, we know that our loved ones would not want us to be in this state of, guilt and feeling horrible and not moving on with our lives. But that we think of it as like a process that we're going through, where we want to continue to be able to adjust to a new normal, create a new normal that is meaningful for us. Okay. So again, some tips: allow yourself time to rest. allow yourself to go through the process. Don't stop taking care of yourself. Sleep, eat, drink water, move your body. Exercise is so powerful. Get outside. When you feel like it's, socialize, engage in a hobby, something that allows you to focus on something else besides the loss. And be okay with memorializing your loved ones. Some people like to write a letter or keep certain pictures up or something that reminds them of the person, or of their loss, right? So allow yourself to do that. The main thing that I would say, the number one tip is, always try to make sure you find an outlet. You shouldn't always be stuffing down your feelings to where there's no one that you can express how you feel to, because that is what will lead to like increased feelings of depression, guilt, confusion, sometimes feeling like you don't even want to live anymore, right? So finding outlets, in fact, finding a supportive outlet. If you don't have a friend or a family member, it's okay to get professional help. It's okay. And as a therapist, I work with so many people through the grieving process, and I'm just an extra support for them as they go through this. Okay? So I hope I've been able to answer your questions. You can always reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at Chad Wellness, ChadWellness. And if you have any additional questions, I'll just leave you with the fact that we know that grief and loss are part of the human condition, part of our existence. And we are so resilient in so many ways. But in order to have that resilience and be able to be strong, we have to also handle ourselves with care and gentleness and allow ourselves the space to acknowledge our loss. Okay? So I hope you all have a great day, and I hope this has been helpful to you. And until next time, I'll see you. This has been Dr. Montero. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. That was wonderful, Dr. Monteiro.
I love her.
That was awesome. And so, kind of want to touch on that. Shaman, do you want to add on anything from there?
She said a good point about keeping. So let me just cut through the BS and then just get to it. Okay, if you're going through something, distract yourself. Simple, point blank. You want to obviously find good distractions, though. Right? So that's the only issue. So usually when somebody's going through something, it's usually two sides. She obviously gave the good ones where it's like working out, going outside, doing all of those fun, cool stuff. And then you have obviously the people that that end up going to like drugs or like alcohol, or they end up going to like habits that they shouldn't be getting themselves into. Whatever you're doing, remember that the whole purpose of life is to actively get to the best version of yourself. And when you do stuff that actively harm you, you're taking away from that. You're not moving. So using stuff like this, you guys, I'm Yemeniya. I don't believe in stuff like this. I'm not going to lie to you. Before I was like, that's just not really my cup of tea. I'm not going to sit here and like meditate or manifest or this or that or work out but then you do it. You actually do it because you're so sick of not doing anything or holding it in or not. And then you realize that it does have some type of mental clarity. And you got to remember this. When you do something or when you start something in your life, it's unnatural. It's an unnatural thing to do. You're beginning it. So like, yes, is it kind of like silly when you're telling yourself like, sit there, breathe, think about absolutely nothing? And you know how hard it is to think about nothing? For a second, for long, 1 minute, think about absolutely nothing. You know how hard that is? So like when you tell yourself like, okay, like try to build these habits, and you're like, what the heck am I doing? This is so weird. So weird. And then you start building it, and then you tell yourself, oh yeah, you know what? For 5 minutes of my day, I was not thinking about that thing that was bothering me. And then the next day you go, oh, I did it for 10 days, or for 10 minutes. And then the next day you go, oh, I did it for 20 minutes. And you realize that you built something. And that's how things start. So like how she says, if you're looking at any of the things that Dr. Monteiro was saying, like working out, because what that does to your mental is unbelievable. But going outside, taking a breather, isolating yourself for a second, or even talking to people sometimes. That's how I work. I can't isolate. When I'm going through somebody, I need to talk about it. I need to. I don't care who I'm talking to. I need to let it out. So all of these things, if they're not your cup of tea, but the stuff that you're already doing are not working, take it from somebody that's been in the shoes of grief. Whatever grief they've been through some type of pain. And you can't tell me that I never went through something. And that's the beauty. That's like, I can't say, no, you didn't go through grief.
Yeah, Allah tests everybody.
Everybody. So I can't sit here and be like, no, but if somebody's telling you, like, listen, I feel what you're going through, and maybe you should, listen, I don't know how you feel about going to the park every morning, but, just sit down, touch the grass, literally feel the grass, and just try to think about absolutely nothing.
Nature's like the best medicine.
And it's like, when you hear stuff like that, you're either like, okay.
Until you experience
Until
it.
you do it, because that person, they did it because nothing else worked anymore. So start looking at these stuff, because if you're looking at like I need a last resort, this is the last resort. This is literally what we're talking about now. If you're at this stage where there's nothing working anymore, are you working out? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping right? Are you doing all of this? If you're not, there's a problem. We need to work on it, because that's what's going to make you eventually feel better. And that's what I think is very, very important about grief. Those stuff you can't control. There's certain things you cannot control. I cannot control the fact that I just lost my uncle. Allah yarhamah. You guys can't control the fact that you guys lost your dad. You know what I mean? But what we can control is what we're doing now. What we're doing actively for our bodies, for our minds, for our spirits right now. And it's like, what are we doing? Are we bettering ourselves?
What you guys say, Abed? You want to add on to that?
I am so happy. Like, I could just say, take time for yourself, and I'm so happy. Like, every year when we sign our contracts at the end of the year and we have days that we roll over, I roll over all my days. You're only allowed to roll over 10. And I would tell, Miss McGregor at the time, I told him, like, I need to save my days just in case something happens to my dad. I used to tell her. Every year, like, I would say, I'm saving my days just in case something happens to my dad. And subhanAllah, he passed away in the summer and I didn't have work. So I had the time for myself. Because I knew that I needed to be alone, and I needed to experience nature. And I never knew how nature helped so much until COVID happened and everything closed down. And I'm not gonna lie to you, that was grief for me too. Like, I literally felt like I lost, like, regular life. You know what I mean? And that's everybody, just like how she was saying too. But we used to take these walks, and they used to be the highlight of the day. But we don't take the walks anymore. What happened? Troop Fitness, right? Yeah. Where's Eddie? Where's Eddie at?
He's actually busy right now winning a championship, hopefully, in basketball right now.
Oh, well, good luck. I love you. Anyways, so, that helped a lot. And so just take time for yourself. Focus on what you need. Don't worry about other people, what they're going to think, what they're going to say. Just don't think about no one. Be selfish at that moment. Help whatever you're going through, whether it's the loss of a person, a loss of a job, a loss of money, a loss of, a relationship, whatever it may be. Do what you need to do. Focus on yourself. And I'm not going to tell you it's going to get all better. But you're, like she said, it's going to be little holes that you're going to fill in eventually.
And you got to remember that it's your grief. Just like how nobody can tell you how to grieve, it's also your grief. So how you're grieving, there's consequences to everything in life. Good consequences and bad consequences. So no matter what you're doing, you have to remember that you will be the person that's being held accountable. Yes. Nobody can take your grief from you. It's yours. So what you're doing and how you're grieving is up to you. It's up to you to decide. So if you're going to be that person that's like, oh, I'm so sad, leave me alone, this, that, then that's your grief. That's how you're taking it. All of the consequences come from that. But if you're actively trying to better your life because something happened to yourself and now you're trying to understand the purpose of life, then use it. Use it to better your life. People die. People die. We're all going to die. Yeah. Everybody's going to die.
That's the one thing that's inevitable.
Yeah, inevitable. We know this. Okay? And another thing, everybody's going to go through a test in their life. So those are the two things that we know 100% mia bil mia, nobody could take them away.
And no blessing is guaranteed. You can lose it at any day. So you just gotta be
take what you have. Don't take it for granted.
Live for the day.
Absolutely, you guys. And the thing is, though, everything that we're saying, somewhere down in your mind, you know it. Yeah, you know everything that we're saying. You know it somewhere deep in your head. However, the human body, how we work, is sometimes we just need to say it again and again and again out loud, so we can start holding each other accountable. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want me to be like, and alhamdulillah, you guys have been great. And I mean, I appreciate you guys, wallah. But like, even when I was going through it with my uncle, just a little like, hey, if you need anything, text me. Mm-hmm. Like, I know, even if you don't mean it, you guys, even if you don't necessarily mean it, like, if you're going to be that type of person that's like, okay, like, you know what, I just want to be there for somebody, hopefully they'll just show them love. Show them a little bit of love. It's not like, it doesn't need to be like a huge facade. No. ihtaram, give him a little bit of respect, a little bit of gratitude, and just move on with your day. That's all the human body needs. That's all we need.
Yeah.
We just need a little bit of respect, a little bit of love, and call it a day.
Accept our differences. Let us be.
So, but the only thing that I do want to mention is find good distractions. And that's going to be the biggest thing to take away from me is keep your mind busy, but keep your mind busy with good stuff. If you don't know what good stuff is, Google it.
There you go. All right, well, this was an awesome show. I thought this was another great conversation at Table Talk. This is what we do over here. We have good conversations, and it's a lot of fun and very knowledgeable, too. That's why I put this under the category of education under YouTube, because I have a feeling it was going to be educating people. So for those of you that are watching or will eventually be watching, this is Shaman Ghalib, Umar Thabi here. Ibr Thabi is in the building as well.
AKA Big Sis.
AKA Big Sis, OT, and Shay. And yeah, like I said, we go live on YouTube, Oz Media 313, as well as Apple and Spotify podcasts at the end of the day. That's where you can watch it.
Let's give Dr. Monteiro another shout out. Her
Yes.
Instagram is Chad Wellness. Check her out. She does TikTok. She posts all the time. She's great. She's somebody that I look up to whenever I'm going through it. Little funk. I mean, I just literally go on her TikTok and see what she got to say. She gives out tips all the time. I mean,
I love it. I'm here for
yeah,
it.
she's an amazing person, and she's a resource for us all.
There you go. And just want to also say thank you to the sponsors, the Balkan House and BC Adhesives. We will see you all again next week, 7 o'clock, same time.